Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Elad Pod. This is going to be an interesting episode because we're going to do some things very differently than we've done them before. We are going to be taking your comments live like we always do. So for those of you who are new here, my name is Elad Gross. I am a civil rights attorney here in Missouri, former candidate for Missouri Attorney General, have been very involved with Missouri's Democratic Party in one way or another for quite a few years now. I serve on multiple caucuses. I'm a member of a whole bunch of different things around the state, and I've spent a whole lot of time traveling all over Missouri for the last 6 years now. I've been teaching for a very long time in our state, primarily in North St. Louis City, and I think a lot of us have a lot of feelings about what's going on in Missouri. A lot of us might have some different feelings about what just happened nationally, so certainly a day to think about all of this and where our place is as a state, where we are right now in our history, where we're going forward from here. And this is to me, and I think to so many people in our state, to the people that we're hoping to serve as public servants, to the people who are looking to the Democratic Party or to somebody or to something for some guidance and for some leadership. Certainly, I think, personally, that Missouri is in great need of stronger and better leadership, and some that really serves all of us, not just those who can afford to have access to those in power. And that's a big change I think we need to make personally, and it's why I don't think I've been sleeping for quite a few days now. And I think a lot of us are in that same boat for one reason or another. Very excited today, not only to be able to take your comments, if you're able to put them in the comments already. I'm seeing them coming through. So if you do have ideas for Missouri, you have ideas that you want to share, and you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're on Twitter and Periscope, wherever you are, you can go ahead and put those comments in. We'll be able to see those on the screen, and I'm going to try to share as many of these as we possibly can. You will also be able to text. There'll be a phone number that will be up on the screen for most of the show. And for those who have watched before, I always tell you, don't call that number. Today is going to be a little bit different. We're going to try to take some phone calls live as well and have you actually voice your opinion on the show. When we do that, obviously we want to be respectful. We want to be respectful of getting other people's opinions in too. That being said, I ain't going to be here all day. So we do have a website that I put up this morning. It's at takebackmissouri.org or takebackmo.org. Both will get you to the same place. .com will get you there too, in case you make a mistake. But that will be on the screen for the whole show. You can go to that website right now, and you can type in whatever idea that you have for Missouri. You can type it in there, whatever idea you have for the party. And I'll be looking at... Promise this, I'll be looking at every single one that comes in live here today and that comes in later. So please go ahead and share that with friends too. And we need to get more people owning what is happening in our state. We need to get more of us involved, and that's what this is all about. That's what this show has always been about. So I'm very excited. I have a co-host today, Taylor. So let me bring in Taylor, make sure she's there. Taylor, are you here?
I am here. Hello.
Wonderful. I'm so excited, Taylor, that you are here. I've known you for a while now. And we've been on TV together before too. So we've kind of done a recorded thing together. That was a good time. Taylor, if you could you introduce yourself to everybody so they know who you are? And that way, maybe they'll feel more comfortable. I don't know, but maybe they'll say something different. Who knows?
Sure.
But yeah, if you could introduce yourself to everybody too, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Taylor Jackson. I think a lot of you may know me. I most recently was the campaign manager for Kathy Ellis, who ran for Congress in the 8th District. Prior to that, I worked as Kathy's field director at the end of her 2018 race. And then in between that, I've done some candidate consulting for folks in Missouri and across the country. Before that, I worked as a union organizer with SEIU. And before that, I was a healthcare organizer at Planned Parenthood. And ironically, I live in St. Louis City, but I grew up in Kentucky. And all of my work in Missouri has actually been in our rural areas. So, yeah, I think I can offer, maybe an interesting perspective, as well as a lot as someone who lives in, one of the larger city centers, perhaps the largest city center in Missouri, but has done a lot of work meeting folks in our rural communities. So, I'm excited to be here. I think Tuesday was, maybe an unfortunate wake-up call for a lot of folks. And so I'm excited to see, what ideas folks have about moving us forward.
Yeah, and so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try to get as many comments from folks as possible, and very excited to do that today. So we've already got some, and a lot are coming through already. So we're going to put some up on the screen as we get them, and let's see if I can turn this view on. It might be a little bit easier so we can get some folks up there. But there's a lot of ideas already. We'll probably make some comments and maybe we'll respond because some of these are questions too. But a lot of this is really you sharing your ideas, and so other people can see too. As you see ideas coming up, maybe something will, something will set that off in your head, and you want to type something too. So go ahead and do that. Feel free to do that too. And like I said, I'm going to get that number up on the screen very soon. So for those who would like to call in or text in their question, you'll be able to do that too. But I do want to start with our first one. It came from Doreen. And if you could also, I know these comments, they're coming from all over. If you could also let us know where you're watching this from, that's really good. And I think that way we're all kind of seeing where we're all from, where we're all watching this from, where we're all seeing these different issues. And, we do have different issues across the state depending on where we are, but we do share a whole lot. And I think seeing that is very helpful too. So Doreen comment, it's a longer one, but it says, I want every individual in government to work towards getting the Fairness Doctrine reinstated. There can be no unity without the Fairness Doctrine being re-implemented. Propaganda and misinformation has ripped this country apart for years. Bring back the Fairness Doctrine so this country can heal. And I think we are seeing, and Taylor, I'm sure you saw this too, with Kathy's campaign and probably a whole lot of other contexts, but the state of the media and where folks are getting their information from right now has certainly been a common theme that I've been hearing recently, but even before that. And, I don't know, a lot of folks are asking, well, how do we deal with that and how do we try to break through that? I don't know if you've got any thoughts from running in, especially with the 8th district, which was, it's large area. I know a lot of folks are getting used for one way or another. And with, the lack of infrastructure, rural broadband and everything else, and the death of a lot of our newspapers, we're kind of seeing limitations to where folks are getting information from.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly a problem. It was a problem in the 8th. I think it's a problem in parts of St. Louis City. I think it's an issue everywhere. Folks are certainly getting a lot of their ideas, and definitely the ideas about what the Democratic Party is, from Fox News, which does not help us in any regard. I think what we've found and what I'm thinking about moving forward is that, we can run ads, we can send things into papers, we can try to get messaging out further. But that messaging is incredibly more effective coming from other people in those communities, from other talking to your neighbors, talking to your family members. And that is certainly easier said than done. But I think any sort of structure moving forward has to really look at how do we invest in local organizers who are having those conversations, maybe not attached to the electoral process, and how do we kind of bridge that divide? But yeah, misinformation is a huge battle. Sometimes we're starting behind in terms of correcting misinformation before we can even start getting our own messaging across.
And there's this is great because another question that came in online from Josiah, talking a bit about what exactly building a party looks like and what it takes. And I think it's a good question. And one thing that you mentioned, Taylor, was really, the need to organize. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's part of the party. It might be something that's a little bit more independent. We do have groups. I know a lot of folks are looking at Georgia right now, and they're looking at Stacey Abrams, who, obviously was a Democratic candidate, ran an organization that was separate from the party, but very much affiliated. But she was not the only one who was a part of this. This was a long-term organizing project with so many different groups that were all involved and so many that had input. And we do have quite a few of those organizations right now that are really working very hard all over the state. And, there's a lot of parts of the state that are left out of that. There are a lot of organizations that everybody needs more resources. And, I wonder, when you think about the party itself, when you think about what can be outside of that and helpful for it, were there, I mean, maybe some groups or thoughts about where that can come from?
Yeah, so I can speak to the 8th district. We had a lot of success working with folks in the Indivisible groups. That was a big piece of that. Indivisible, for those who don't know, is a national group who has really worked to kind of build up organizing infrastructure. And so we found those to be, groups of folks who were willing to hand out lit and knock doors when we could and make calls. And that was incredibly helpful. One change that we saw this cycle from past cycles was groups like Planned Parenthood and NARAL are organizing in these areas and actually have permanent organizers living in these regions. So that's huge. I think there's a massive misinformation piece that folks think, we need to, put people into these areas to organize. Organizing not happening, that is certainly not true. There are tons of people in these rural areas organizing and doing an incredibly good work against really great odds. What they need is a lot of support and resources and a party infrastructure that can support them. Candidates run in cycles. What we need is an organizing infrastructure that exists outside of cycles. Yeah. So that when candidates step up to run, something exists. They don't have to build up party infrastructure for every candidate that runs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I've had some very interesting conversations over the last few days. And some of those are with, a lot of those are with party groups, many of them in more rural areas of the state, certainly areas that the Democratic Party has not been very successful in terms of electoral politics for some time, with folks who are, what do we do? Like they understand that there's a problem, and how do you get, you've got such hostility towards the party right now for a whole bunch of reasons. And folks who are saying, like, how do we get people to come back, or even give us, consider us? And, some of these conversations have been very depressing because people who have been working so hard, even within the party, have not felt very supported, or have not felt that even if they do have some, what's the point? What are we doing? They haven't gotten new people in, don't know how to do that, the outreach there. And I think, I mean, a lot of times we get really excited about one candidate or another, one name or another. We put a whole lot of eggs in one basket and hope it works out. And, for a while it was. And when it doesn't work out, here we are. And there's not as strong, certainly, of that infrastructure as we used to have in Missouri. And it's one that we certainly did have. And, I think is interesting is for the organizing piece, because there are those groups that are doing it on issues. I think many of those issues align with what the Democratic Party at least should be. I think a lot of those are around folks who need to have their rights protected in the workplace, folks who are working really hard around issues around poverty and healthcare, all of these different things we talk about all the time. But if there's not that sustained presence that links this to that, and I think a lot about right to work, for example, where that was defeated soundly in Missouri, but that didn't translate necessarily into Democrats do it. I mean, like, look, that's the issue. Like, that's a big issue, right. And that should be you just gotta take that and be bold about it and talk about it. And I don't know. I mean, I was talking to I won't out him here, but I was talking to a guy who used to work for Kit Bond, and some of you may know who I'm talking about once I start describing. But he used to work for Kit Bond, and he says he's not a Democrat, but he might as well be. But he used to work for Kit Bond, and Joe Teasdale ran as a Democrat against Kit Bond. Kit Bond was the governor. He came in with a whole bunch of younger folks, Ashcroft and Danforth, and they were all, the Democrats have taken over. We've got to reform the system. And their message was a powerful one that resonated. When Joe Teasdale ran against Kit Bond, they thought, oh, there's no way Joe's going to win. He's a Democrat. He's down by 20 points. No one knows. And he went everywhere, all over the place. And all he talked about all the time was one issue. And it was an issue that resonated with so many people, and it was the It was the utility rates being too high and the bills being too much. And he would be, at speeches, and he would pull out his bill and he would be like, "See, look, we've got to take these down." And at the time, they thought, well, this guy's not going to do anything. And eventually, I mean, it just hit so much, and it was repeated so much, and people really felt that. And I think that what we need to really look for is input from people to find out what those issues are, those issues that are really going to resonate with folks. And I think that, the fewer of those issues that we really focus on and really make that the highlight and understandable, I don't know, it seems like that's a good combination between the issue organizers and what the party can do to kind of harness that and bring that back together. But
yeah, I think it's interesting. I hear a lot from folks living in St. Louis, specifically on the right to work issue. And not just St. Louis, I should say any of the urban areas.
Yeah.
Why do rural folks vote against, they vote against right to work, and then they vote for folks who put right to work in? What's been interesting to me is when you actually go talk to folks who are maybe disenfranchised, maybe haven't voted in a few cycles, are certainly not connected to a Democratic Party structure. They don't actually know that Democrats supported the opposition to right to work. I think it's a misconception that folks are super clear on what the Democratic Party platform is and just assume, well, why would folks vote against healthcare? Why would folks vote against minimum wage increases? But people don't know that, and they're not going to know that until we start having conversations with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece that has been missing from the way we run statewide campaigns. We do a lot of talking at.
Yeah, and the number of people who have been in voter lines who don't know what they're about to go vote for. Like, they know who's running for president. Everybody, and it was a different time. We've had these before, but like everybody was very focused on that. So you had a whole bunch of folks who were coming out to vote, which is great. I think the more people voting, the better. But you had a whole bunch of folks who certainly were informed in one way or another about that. We could disagree about the quality on one side or the other, whatever. Everybody, but they certainly had an opinion. Most people probably had an opinion about that. They might have known who was running for governor and on either side, and then, who knows?
Yep.
And what were the issues? And the thing that really killed me was Amendment 3. Amendment 3 has kept me up longer than anything else that's been happening in our country right now during this time, because that was just bad. Like, that was bad. And it was something that folks just voted for, and you read the thing, and it just, there was all these resources that were in there, and it still didn't work. And the communication, if we can't communicate on that issue, which there are a lot of very simple things to talk about on that issue, if that didn't hit home with folks, that to me just says, wow, whatever we've got going on ain't working. Like, it's just not working. And the stakes that are here are just to me, they are just way too high to just kind of sit here and be like, oh, it's not the party's fault, or blame people for thinking this way, or whatever it is. Like, our job, at least I would think, the job should be to bring people to understand the way that we are, or to see something that we're seeing, to convince people. And that's how, it's always been when we've had elections or something else, but to really show, like, why should you go this way or that way? And it's,
absolutely. Yep.
Linda's got a good comment. Everybody knows Linda. If you get an email from the Missouri Democratic Party, that's the MDP, there's a survey in your inbox, fill it out. Good idea. When folks are asking for input, give them the input, and, let them know. So, this is, Carla. There's a lot of this discussion about, finding what is bringing folks together on a whole. I think that's right. I really think that there is so much. Like, there's a lot of differences, and, folks, when you're living in a small town, and maybe there's a lot more agriculture here, or you've got a lot more production capacity here, your economies look a little bit different. Certainly now, because of years and years of Republicans winning in one place and Democrats winning somewhere else, if you're on the opposite side of that and you live there, you feel very disenfranchised to a large degree. I I think certainly when we talk about at least economic issues, there are a lot of things that kind of cross those geographic boundaries that we put up.
Yeah, I would totally agree, especially, things like raising the wage and, securing high paying jobs for folks and infrastructure. Infrastructure is huge for rural communities, as it should be, but it's also huge for folks who live in St. Louis City and Kansas City, right? They're seeing their roads crumble in a lot of ways as well. I would say, one topic that I think the party in general and party candidates need to message around more is agriculture. Whether we like it or not, it's a huge part of our state. And whether we're comfortable talking about it or not, we need to. But things like CAFOs are a winning issue for Democrats. And I don't think many of our statewide candidates messaged around that this year. And it's, it can be complicated, right? Like, you look at me, I don't live in rural Missouri. I don't fit in there. It's very clear that I live in a city. But, we have to talk about these issues. If we want to be able to have these conversations with voters, buckle up, Buttercup, there are resources out there, but we have to be able to message around them. And we're not. We're just avoiding things we're uncomfortable with. And then, every cycle we say, oh, well, maybe it's this one particular issue that is why we keep losing. We're going to ditch it. That doesn't fix anything. It's a facade. But that is my own pet peeve of the cycle.
Yeah, I mean, and there were a lot of areas in Missouri that were Democratic before, and there's a discussion about how did things change and all of that. But there's still, wherever you go, and we've both been to a lot of places and lots of driving. And Kathy still had me beat because of the virus. I know I was going to get more miles than her, but then that virus happened. But a whole lot. And there are folks who I just call and listen to. And I think that's true about so many issues. If we spend a lot more time highlighting what people are doing as an organization versus just kind of proclaiming. And, there have been some efforts over the last few years. Missouri Democratic Party had the a whole, farmers plan and everything else. And it was pushed a little bit. I think, maybe we're just not finding the right avenues to communicate. I think that there's a lot of ways to be very creative about that and create more spectacles and get more attention on it. I talk to J.C. Owsley all the time about different issues. But CAFOs, I think, is a big thing. And it's funny because you said that and literally it popped up on my screen. But folks who are talking about that right now, this is an example, CAFO moratorium. And for those of you who don't know what a CAFO is, those are these those pictures of the farms where the animals are just absolutely packed in. There is a film out there, the Missouri Rural Crisis Center, by the way, a wonderful organization that is doing wonderful work organizing in rural communities right now. But these things are they cause so many environmental problems when they're not, a lot of them are not done right because, heck, it costs money to clean up after yourself. There are a lot of workers' issues involved in those. There's a lot of ownership and foreign ownership versus domestic ownership of farmland in Missouri. There's all these different policies that go into it. And the very basic end of it is if you look at what's happening in rural Missouri right now, and you think about family farmers and folks who have been there for a long time, and, they don't have a whole bunch of investment bankers from some other place, New York City, or maybe even China in our case, because we do have some Chinese companies and Brazilian companies here too. And if you don't have all that money, you are now competing against somebody who can get a whole bunch more land, can get all these machines. They can just go through them and then invest in more of them the next year. And they're just destroying family farms right now through these monopolies that they've created through government control, government policies, and government welfare, basically, for corporations in Missouri. And they're just gutting communities all throughout our state as a result of that. And, that's agricultural related policy, but that's something that even you don't have to know the price of soybeans in Missouri right now to understand that feeling of this big power, this machine that is buying our government so that it can extract as much as it can from our state and extract so much from us and our families.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And the other thing I see popping up over here is rural broadband. I think that's something we need folks talking about. A lot of these rural communities were once thriving communities, and as things have gotten more digital and the need for internet has become greater, those communities have suffered, and it's a problem we can fix. That's what's so wild about rural broadband, is that it is something that with the right leadership we can fix. But I think you're absolutely right. I also, sorry, I'm taking your job now, but I see a comment from Linda.
Take it, yeah, please.
And I think Linda says, without quality candidates to challenge Republicans, they never hear progressive ideas. And I think that's right too, right? If we want to talk about the fact that a lot of times folks don't know what the Democratic Party stands for, we need to be prepared to run folks in every single seat across the state. And we need to prepare those folks to know that they may not win, and they probably won't win. And that's okay. It's going to take cycles and cycles for us to rebuild this up. But we've written off 2/3 of the state and said, it's too hard. These conversations are too hard. We're not prepared to have them, and hoped that our cities can carry us forward. And it's not working. It's clearly not working. So I think that's a big piece of this too, is like, we have to recruit folks who really care. And those people are there. It's not like there aren't folks who want to run. That's part of the issue, but a big part of it is that folks want to run.
Yeah.
But they don't know how, and they don't have the support they need to do it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been talking to folks now, and I'm putting the number back up on the screen, because if you are interested in running, please let me know.
Yeah.
Please let me know, like, right now. Just do, like, even if you're thinking, I don't know. And there's a lot of people who are on the fence about it, right? And they're just, I want something to be different. And a lot of folks, when you get to that mindset, we're all busy. We all got things going on. And some people are pointing out Mr. Toby. Mr. Toby, my dog, takes up a whole lot of attention and a whole lot of time, and he needs it. I understand that. But at the same time, like, you feel this urge and this need to get something done and to make some changes, right? So you're sitting there and saying, well, maybe somebody else will do it. Maybe somebody will come in and swoop in and save the day. No. Like, you're the one who has to come in and save the day. You have to do it. You have to get involved. Mm-hmm. And maybe that doesn't mean running. Maybe that means you're helping your friend run. Maybe that means you're helping organize some of this outreach that we're talking about right now. Who knows? But if you're even kind of thinking about it, definitely save that number. Call me after the show. We could talk right now too if you want to. But like, literally, I just, this morning got off the phone with somebody who's interested in running in 2022. Somebody, the other day, it was last night. The days are all blending together. I don't even know anymore. But last night, somebody who had run, who's going to do it again, is ready to go again. Local stuff for House districts, for Senate districts, statewide, whatever you want. But it's got to be us. Like, there's not anybody coming. No one's coming to just fix everything. Like, we all have to do it. And when we all do it, that's, and somebody made this point about Georgia, and Stacey Abrams certainly did a wonderful job. And the 800,000 registered voters, goodness gracious, can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine? But it was not one person. It was so many people and so many groups and things that started out as like a Facebook post somewhere, or just a thought or a text thread about like, oh, what if we jokingly, did this initiative petition in Michigan, and then they did it and they won because they had all these people doing all these different things. And so I know a lot of folks are commenting for one person or another to go do something and to fix it. No, it's like if you're commenting, then you are ready to do it, and then that you hit me up at that number on your screen right there and let me know. We'll get that done. But yeah, I think certainly having. And it's candidates who really know why they're doing it. And if you do, you'll speak from that place. And if you don't know how to run a campaign, you don't know how to fundraise, you don't know what a treasurer is, we all do. And we'll fix that for you. So hit us up. Taylor's really good at this stuff too. So
thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I do think that is a big piece that doesn't get talked about though. Like, I think you and I both have stories of people who wanted to run for office this past cycle, or had thought about running in cycles before that, but didn't think or knew they wouldn't get the support they needed. And I made that comment on Twitter this week and got some comments of like, well, the party is strapped for cash. I get that. Trust me, I'm very familiar with being strapped for cash. But a lot of times what these folks need is not a check. They need exactly what you're talking about. How do they raise money? Information about how to build a website. It doesn't have to be a check. It can be the in-kind support as well. And I think that would be huge. And I think we've seen folks like the HDCC do that really effectively this cycle. And I would like to see that expanded. That is part of my stump speech. But yeah, I think we can be strapped for cash, but we can still do good work and recruit and support good candidates.
And let me tell you what, talk about strapped for cash. I'm going to go right back to it, but Amendment 3. The people who are supporting Amendment 3, they put like no money in the darn thing. And it was just because this wasn't even a good one, right? They didn't even have a good argument on it. And they entirely piggybacked that onto some Democratic plot to do something to make sure that our kids counted in our district. Okay? But no one mentioned that last part, of course. They just said, Democrats are trying to take over. And they were able to figure out what the context, they knew what people were thinking. Like they know that there was a hostility towards this issue, and they knew that they wanted to push this terrible agenda. And I could talk about that all day, and I have already. And so just piggyback, and they barely won, right? It still passed because they were thinking about what was happening around them. And they had such an advantage in all this other stuff. It was, just throw that one in there too. Why not? And, somebody made a really good point that this looks a lot like Amendment 3, what happened with Amendment 3, and I think it's why I'm so fired up. It looks a lot like what happened before all of those guys, those Republicans who said we need a reform in our state, when they ran and it was a Democratic supermajority and everything, and they said because the Democrats are taking advantage of our state right now. And they have all the power and they're doing whatever they want. And we can't let them do that anymore. And that's Amendment 3 has got, if that is not our inflection point where somebody's deciding that, the districts are going to be drawn in a way to favor us and we're going to make sure it stays that way. And that's how we're going to keep if like taking away our ability to be represented in our government is not enough to get people fired up to say, we've got to change this thing. We got a lot more problems and we do. We've got, you talked about education and civic education and the need to do that. And that's why, I feel like organizing is such an important piece of this because you've got to get that information out there. And, I put a comment on earlier, but there's so many new ways for us to get that information out there right now. And we got to take advantage of that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one example, by the way, I should say, because someone's not very happy with this post right now. One example right now is streaming this kind of stuff online and putting it on different platforms. And one of those platforms that we're live on right now is Twitch. And I've got to tell you, I'm not super familiar with Twitch, and this is my fault because I try to research this stuff and learn about it. And yes, I think we are listed under the game Among Us right now. That's a mistake. We're not going to be playing Among Us, but
sorry.
However, I know we did. Okay, and that was an example of outreach and trying to get more people in. And we do have a lot of people watch that darn thing. But we will play. Don't worry, we'll have another game in the future, which I think is important for outreach and getting people excited too. And if you're available on Monday nights at 8:30, go ahead and let me know. Shoot me a text. I'll put the number back on the screen. But we'd love to have you. We do a weekly game. So yeah, I'm sorry, Twitch people. I'll fix that afterwards. But I'm so sorry. Yeah. See, you learn some things. And sometimes you got to take some risks in this thing, and you're going to put yourself out there, and you're going to make a mistake. You're going to say the wrong thing. So, accept it and say sorry and go on. We're getting a lot of comments about rural Missouri.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Another one from Dana about stronger leadership and really, more aggressive recruitment of candidates.
Yeah, I think Dana's right. I also see a comment from Tammy. Hi, Tammy, who ran this past cycle. And Tammy makes a great point. Candidates need help from the very beginning. Many groups don't help with funding until after primaries or until they've raised a lot of money. I think that's what a lot of times folks don't realize about campaigns is that when you call folks and ask them for donations, especially folks who maybe are in organizations, the first thing what they want to know is how much money you've already raised. And that is a nightmare for folks who are, trying to raise as much as they can from their communities, but are not millionaires that can self-fund these campaigns. I think Tammy is exactly right. We need something at the beginning to help candidates who want to run, build the campaign from the get-go. It's the biggest challenge folks face when starting to run is like, well, how do I get started? How do I raise my first $5,000? It's a huge problem.
Yep. And there's and the comments aren't all rural either.
Yeah.
Hi, Audrey. How are you doing? But Sarah from St. Louis, about having just like a way for people to stay connected year round. And I think that would be a big help already, like right now, and I think there are the ward organizations in St. Louis City. There are clubs in different counties. There are the central committees. And if that's something that you're interested in, get involved, right? And sure, like some of them you have to be elected to that spot, but you can still go to the meetings. A lot of them are doing them on Zoom now because of the virus and everything else. There's a lot of ways to stay involved. And even if you're not elected to something, but you want to have input on stuff, honestly, if you just say, hey, I want to do this, folks, oh my goodness, please, thank you, and do this. Half the stuff, like 90% of the stuff I do, I'm just like, hey, you know what? Can we use this? Could we use a strategic plan? Could we use a plan for all of these districts? Could we do a 10-year thing? It's like, if you want to write the darn thing, sure, we'll check it out. Okay, great, So, yeah, but I think that it would be helpful if more of that was easier to see. I think if it was more visible and more accessible for folks, right?
I think that's totally true. And I'll just say a lot of my focus is on rural communities because I think, quite frankly, someone said to me this week, we may not win in rural communities, but we will certainly lose statewide races in them. And I think we saw that this past Tuesday. We can't ignore them. But I would argue that the party, and when I want to be really clear, and Elad, I think you would agree, that when I say the party, I mean all of us in the party structure. The party staff are stellar, hardworking folks who worked their butts off this cycle. But we have to, the party structure is not working anywhere right now. I live in St. Louis City in an area that is overwhelmingly Democrat, and things are not working effectively here either. So this is a statewide problem that we need to figure out how to fix. It's certainly not just our rural areas.
Right. It's not. And heck, I've hung out with a lot of the folks who work in the party. We do have a tendency sometimes of importing people from outside of the state to start running things here for our elections. And, some of them seem nice. I don't know how helpful that is because then they leave. And I guess maybe we can go get money and try to bring them back. But usually it's somebody different. And, we're at a point where obviously importing folks didn't work too well. And, I've talked to some folks, even folks who worked out in D.C., folks who specialize on rural outreach, whatever the heck that is. I just call it making friends and talking to people. But, yeah, some people got a term for it. And, here we are. And, it seems like we have such an opportunity to just find ways for folks to just plug in, right? Like, hey, who can do this? And then people are like, yeah, I'll jump on a call. I'll do that. I'll run around and put no on 3 stuff on people's doors. Like, okay, so maybe, we figure out how to make that more of a systematic and sustained thing over time. Even right now, like somebody just texted me about needing help putting an initiative petition out there for something local. Like, that's great. And the issues that you talk about and the ways that you organize people and, just having those conversation around issues takes this away from being Republican, Democrat, takes it away from everybody being, the Democrats are the worst, and now it's like a real situation. And now if you're talking about a real situation, maybe that's how you then ramp up to somebody saying, well, you know what? That person is now on my ballot and is running as a Democrat. I knew them from this. They're a good one. And maybe that's how it begins, with just a few folks doing it. And I don't know. I feel very strongly that the issue-based stuff is going to be so important if we do move forward, which we should move forward, which we need to do. But I don't know. I think a lot of the issue stuff is going to be really important.
Yep. Oh, I totally agree. I think moving forward, that is how we win, and start moving these districts forward and our state forward is like, we have to come in with strong context and strong messaging about the issues we do support and lean less on the national party infrastructure. I think that has been, we have folks running for school board who are getting questions about Nancy Pelosi and, and they need to be talking about their public education system. It's a distraction. I don't know how we fix that, but it's certainly an issue for candidates who are running.
Yeah. And I mean, there's I don't know. I mean, there's so many freaking comments on this thing, but there was one that I had earlier. I've been talking about this for a while, but someone said we need to have more organizing. And then someone asked, what does that look like? And the answer was, this is from Cass County. And the answer was, I thought it was the sweetest thing. She said, you know what if we doing stuff for people where we live? Like food drives and checking in on people and just being nice to each other. I mean, yeah, right? It can be just basic, help each other out kind of stuff. And I mean, we've really, we're certainly at a point, look, we're on the internet right now. We're texting a whole lot. Heck, I'm literally texting during the show right now with a whole lot of folks. And it is, and certainly with a pandemic going on, it has exacerbated this to a large degree. But there is even before, there was a very big movement towards much more in-person isolation from each other and less of these, getting together in these gatherings and groups and everything else with each other and talking about these things. And, maybe it's because we are so polarized. I don't know. But there certainly seems to be a lot more folks, especially in Missouri. I know Missouri very well, but a lot of folks who want to help each other and would really be interested in doing things like that would come out to volunteer for something. And, there seems to be a lot of different ways to organize. And you will know that best because you live there and you're from there and you know what those issues are. And in a lot of places, unfortunately, in Missouri, those issues are in poverty is a very big one, and in so many places in our state. But there are other ones out there too. I mean, there's environmental ones. I know, not too far from where we are right now, a bunch of coal ash ponds and types of pollution there, and I mean, a freaking landfill with nuclear waste in it. And, there's been some wonderful organizations that have come out from folks wanting to help their community. And if we can make that the priority and then make this politics stuff secondary, it sure seems like, yes, if you want to do that, please go do that. Do as much of that as you possibly can. Oh, my goodness, please.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, this is from, hopefully it's Jesse. I'm trying to say, oh, that's an interesting little picture. But Georgia being very different from Missouri, and how Stacey Abrams and those groups were focused very much on metropolitan areas. Maybe we're closer to Texas, and trying to combine something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different states that have done this over time. I mean, Texas didn't go the way that everybody, was trying to pretend like it was going to, but, people like to dream. But Virginia is a great example. Virginia is one where folks have been organizing. It was 10 years. I know some people have mentioned Stephen Weber before, who's the head of the party a few years ago, and he was involved with the farmers. I think it was the Farmers' Bill of Rights or something like that. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. But I mean, he was there too. I mean, he was there for part of it. He's been organizing with unions here. There's a lot of those different groups and different states that have approached it differently. I think you just look at everywhere. I mean, who's done what, and in different kinds of ways too, not necessarily just political. And I think a lot about this group that did poll parties, I think it was called, but they would have these parties at polling places, like with bouncy houses and food and everything else, and then people would be like, what's going on? Oh, an election right there, you should go vote. And like, oh, okay, well, watch my kid and I'll go vote. And they saw the turnout at those locations increase tremendously. So, I mean, you get creative. Like, have a good time. Have a good time with it, too, is important.
Yeah, I think that's totally true, too. Like, organizing at its very basic is just having conversations with your neighbors. And those do not have to always be these painful, rot conversations that I think we often do in election cycles. Like, hang out and do a socially distanced barbecue and talk about how folks are feeling. That's what I think is going to fix this. And I unfortunately think it's going to take a long time. But bridging that divide between folks and having real conversations, I think, is the way we move forward.
Yeah, this is. Oh, I put Jesse back on the screen. Hold up. I'm trying to put Lori. There we go. This is another good example about Clay County. Clay County was actually the target of some significant fraud and public fraud. And the auditor, Nicole Galloway, actually looked into a whole bunch of that. And there were folks locally who organized around this issue. I'm sure that there are people throughout the state who don't know what happened in Clay County and certainly don't know all the details of what happened. But that's a local issue that was then taken and expanded upon to bring people, to have a voice in government. And, you get people fired up, and you're going to start getting some crossover folks as a result of that too.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of stuff about transparency. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about single issue voters forever, but, yeah. Man. Yeah, social media outreach, definitely. I mean, something that, in one thing, and I'll put, Lori again, I'll put you back on the screen. So, I mean, one of the biggest ways we're behind, and we really need, a lot of people are here commenting about radio, about being behind on TV and outreach and everything there. YouTube is a place where conservatives are doing very well with messaging and putting videos out, and sometimes some conspiracy things are out there too that are, not conservative liberal. They're just nuts and they're out there. But the Democratic side is not doing enough on there at all. And it's a huge platform. It's like the second biggest search engine. And my mom made the joke when I told her that. It wasn't a joke. It was actually a reality. It's because Google owns the darn thing, which is accurate. And that's a whole nother issue about antitrust that I could talk about forever. So we're not going to do that quite now. But yeah, I mean, it's something else that certainly there's a lot of these different platforms to do outreach on. And
I think too, like the data on the effectiveness of TV ads is dwindling. I think we're seeing the effectiveness of those go down. I think whether we like it or not, and I certainly don't always like it, but the social media piece of this is going to be huge. People are always surprised, but we found that in the 8th district, most folks have Facebook, and they spend a lot of time on Facebook, as well as YouTube. So, I think that's something that we're going to have to certainly figure out moving forward, because I think the Republicans are beating us at that right now in a lot of ways.
And you know what? Okay, the question is just coming up all the time, so I'm going to put it out there. Single issue voters. And, okay, I got really frustrated. Let's just put it out there.
Yeah,
I got very frustrated about one of our United States senators, Josh Hawley. I get frustrated about him a few times a day. Josh Hawley is out there talking. Some of the stuff that he says, I entirely agree with. I entirely agree that we have allowed monopolies to dominate markets in our country. I entirely agree that if we don't fight those monopolies, then we are going to lose our small businesses. We are going to lose, in a lot of ways, freedom for us to participate in whatever it might be. Because monopolies, they put up barriers, they eliminate competition, and they destroy the ability for folks to participate in our economy, which is a very big deal for a whole lot of things, and I could talk about this forever. Now, the problem is he's very good at hitting those issues that speak to a lot of people, But then at the very end there, he takes you down a path that is, in a lot of ways, becomes a little bit more hypocritical because it's more self-serving than anything else. And one of those issues that he is talking a whole lot about is privacy. He's talking a whole lot about privacy and maintaining privacy and protecting our privacy and our rights to privacy, all of that stuff. A lot of the single issue voting in Missouri is around abortion. That's an issue that comes up in a lot of places for a whole lot of reasons. And, I think if you still look at the majority of folks, even in our state, Roe versus Wade, that's the way it should be. When you phrase it, when you talk about it, when you actually talk about the issue, folks are like, you know what? And the bill that we passed in Missouri to virtually ban abortion, and to do that for even in cases of incest and rape and all, insane. You even had a Republican state representative who voted against it, and you had a Republican president of the United States, Donald Trump, who came out on Twitter and said, what are we doing? Yep. This is too much. And we still, that passed by our legislature. It wasn't passed by the people. It was passed by legislative representative government, sure. But most folks in Missouri don't agree with that. And I think that, certainly there are a whole lot of reasons why these kinds of restrictions are wrong. And sexism, the way that you're trying to tell folks what to do. But that's the thing. Like when you phrase it as a way where you're trying to tell folks what to do, and you're trying to eliminate that privacy, that should be our issue. And that issue touches on all of these different things that Josh is talking, Senator Hawley, I'm sorry, I shouldn't call him, Senator Hawley's talking about. And we're not there in that conversation because it's like, so much of this stuff seems like it's just short-sighted in terms of what the policy is and then what the outcomes are. Because, we desperately want to win on this, that, or the other. Or, some poll said that healthcare was really important. That's healthcare too. And if we don't talk about privacy and we don't talk about the history of this country and the history of this state, of course people aren't going to know that we used to sterilize people in this country. Of course you're not going to know that we did experimentations on people and that your right to bodily autonomy is connected to your right to live privately and to not have the government tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And so out the door, and we cede that conversation to somebody else who then talks about it. A lot of people agree with a lot of the premise of it, and then twist it at the end to serve some other agenda. And sure, there's going to be things that we always disagree on. Some people are going to think that forever they're going to be in one camp versus another. But that doesn't mean that we can't get to a point, and it's been done in other places, and it's been done in some of our communities right here, where folks they agree to disagree, and they don't vilify the rest of what you say. And we have to at least get to that point. And it seems like one of the best ways to get to that point is to at least know who we are, know who each other is, find other ways and other things that we agree on, but also maybe look at what the very fundamentals of these issues are and where fundamentally we agree on, even if at the very end of it, we kind of diverge at the end.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm screed.
I have nothing to add.
I'm so frustrated. I'm just so frustrated. I don't, because this state is such a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place. And we have such wonderful folks, and we have such an interesting history. And what are we doing with it? We've forgotten who these people are. Some people don't even know, what came before. The Democrats who said this and who thought that, bureaucracy was getting to be too big and we had to make government more accessible and had a tremendous support around the state. And then we just kind of forgot. I don't know what's going. I don't know. It's just upsetting. It's upsetting to see that this we had to fall this far, and we're still we're trying to have the conversation, and we're not going to agree on everything, and that is okay. But it's and I've mentioned this before, but I had a football coach, and he'd always look at us and he'd say, "You're all fighting like this, with your fingers out, and until you make a fist, you're not going to beat anybody." And we're just like this. and we have egos and we have all these other things we can't put aside for just like one moment in order to say this has to happen. And it's not because we want a Democrat to get elected. It's not because we need to dominate the legislature and tell everybody what's right and what's wrong. It's because there are people who are relying on us, who are giving us like $5 when they make a total of $30 in a month because they're on Medicaid and they live in a nursing home, or because they're living in Pemiscot County or St. Louis City or wherever they are, and they have nothing. And this is the hope for them that maybe something will change. And we owe them more than this. And sorry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we have I think one thing that I've seen, and I get it, I find myself in this boat sometimes too, but we are scared to have hard conversations.
Yeah.
Terrified. And rather than have hard conversations and agree to disagree on things and talk about what our stance is, we avoid it. We take things out of party platforms. We hope we never have to talk about it again. But like, quite frankly, none of these things are going away. And until we learn to, come together and actually start having these conversations, we're going to keep losing. You lose every conversation you don't have. I don't know how to. Yeah. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. It just seeding, and it's just like a state of, and this happens, and I don't know. I got hit a lot in the head when I was playing football, and so maybe that's why I keep thinking about it. But I was on a team here in Missouri, won the state championship. I shouted that out when I was in Webb City the other day because there was one time where you all were the runner-ups on that stadium, and I shouted it out because that was us. We did that. But and then I went to a college where we were fortunate to win one game in the season, and everybody's looking at me, and people who've seen me in person like, that little dude was on a football team. I wasn't very good, and I didn't. I got cut like 3 times. But the culture and the belief that we are going to lose or it's not going to work poisons everything else. And there was a poster. Gosh, I should have talked to I saw my coach. My coach is over on the Kansas City side now, and he came out for a campaign event once. But there was a poster that was right above the meeting room, and all it said was "expect to win." And it wasn't. It was just that mindset and that fight. And I think that when you expect to lose, that does a lot to you. And it tells you that when it's time to go and fight, you just don't. You just kind of, well, what's the point, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. This is a good question from John. John's always got good questions on here. Is it possible Amendment 3 can be overturned in court? Short answer, yes. And I could talk about this a lot, too. There were a lot of things that were done there that were unconstitutional, and unfortunately that message didn't get out enough. But, yeah, there are a lot of problems with that, so we will certainly be challenged. Yvonne? Yep.
Yes,
need a 24/7 sustained effort and a 10-year plan. I agree.
Yep. Especially in these areas where maybe we don't have folks on the. We talked to lots of people who went to vote and like they had one Democratic choice on their entire ballot. Well, okay, I don't know if those folks would have won if we had people running for those spots, but we sure as hell would have maybe had more cohesive messaging and more organizing going on. I think that's a big piece of this. Like, it is going to be tough. Folks who run in these areas can tell you, Elad, you can tell it, like it's tough. You're certainly signing up to put your life on full exposure and, sacrifice a lot. But we have to do it. We've written off 2/3 of the state and said it's too hard. And we're not even trying to compete in a lot of these areas. We can't win things we don't sign up for. There's no way. Right. It's got to happen.
Yep, exactly. I mean, people are, while you're saying it, I'm finding old comments and people agree. Yeah, it's got to happen. Yeah. Well, I'm seeing a whole lot. If you don't get it in here, you can still go. The website's at the bottom of the screen. Take Back Mo or Take Back Missouri. If you forget it, don't worry. Both will get you there. .org.com, and you can put your ideas there, because obviously the show is going to end in a little bit. Probably should have already, but yeah. I mean, look, I've got a whole bunch of text here. Somebody asking about the U.S. Census and how important that is, and I mean, just organizing around that. Like it's a non-partisan issue to get more folks to respond to the census, and the rates were not good. The rates were not good, and that's another worry. But I mean, just
and
like
I think.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just about the census. We saw a few candidates organize around the census this cycle. Cori Bush was one of those, and I commend her for that remarkable work. She had the ability to do that because she had won the primary and was, pretty sure to win the general. Yeah. Not every candidate has that ability. Like, we have to create that structure outside of the 10 or 15 people who sign up to run for office across the state in these larger positions. That's work that we should be planning for in advance and making sure that we can build up capacity to do. It shouldn't be incumbent on candidates to do that work necessarily.
Right. I mean, look, like you've got some candidates who are going to be in safer districts and they're going to win, and then they can help each other, right? And we do see that in Missouri. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I mean, I like when people have different ideas. I try to surround myself with people who disagree with me all the time. And, maybe that's a good, maybe that's a bad. I love it. So I'm going to do it. But, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I think being transparent about these kinds of conversations is really important. And I think it's the only way that you really regain trust of people, is that if they can see they can be a part of this. And I hope, if you're a Republican who's watching this and you're looking, and maybe you're really happy with your party, maybe you're not, and you see this and you've got an idea, or you just want to, kind of look at the Democrats yelling at each other, whatever, that's fine. Cool. And maybe one day you'll watch one of these and you'll type in a comment and you'll say, I wonder what they'll respond to this. And then they do. And then you say, wow, they're actually being really responsive to what I am interested in. And, maybe I'll get a buddy to come back, or maybe I'll watch next week. Wonderful. And I think it's just like basic stuff like that, where we can have these conversations, is going to be so important, especially in a state like ours right now, where we need to be talking to each other as much as possible. There are a couple, so I do want to wrap it up, because we can do this all day, and I certainly need to go to sleep at some point. Already. But Sarah asked a great question. How can we help people who are doing this? Elizabeth has putting some comments in there too. Here's the deal. If you go to that takebackmo.org website and you type it in, and maybe your comment is just, I want to be involved, do that. Like, do it. Right now is an extremely important point for all of us to get involved. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for us to do that. And, I'm one person who's working on stuff. I know Taylor certainly has a lot of input to provide. There's a lot of folks all over the state who are working on these things right now. And if you do want to be involved and you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do, again, that's literally my cell phone number on the screen right now. Hit me up, put a message in on that website, whatever it is. But there are going to be a whole lot of opportunities. A lot of us are working on those right now, so we can get those ramped up very soon, so that we can start working on all of these issues right now in a way that we're working together. And we're really trying to build this, not just because we think this is the right way, not just because somebody just from somewhere else think this is what's best for Missouri, but it's because we build this together. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, hit us up. Ask us, say, hey, this is what I want to do, or I don't know what I want to do, and we will get you in the right direction, and hopefully very soon in an even bigger direction together. And it's not about like replicating what other people are doing. They are doing wonderful, wonderful work and pushing them out. We need to highlight those people as much as possible and get you to what they're doing so that they can do even more of it. And, there's going to be some new things that we'll have to do too. And you're going to help us figure that out. And I'm seeing right now, this is crazy, but it's in my comments right now, I mentioned that video game for 2 seconds, and the number of people who are like, my grandson plays that game, or these people, I got to learn how to do it. I mean, there are going to be things that happen out there where it's like some cultural phenomena that people just want to participate in, and that's a great way to connect folks. And if we're just having those initial relationships, then you can move that to something else. And, there's going to be a lot of those opportunities too. So Taylor, you did a great job. This is very helpful because I'm trying to go from like 4 different screens. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to give, having been such a wonderful co-host for this?
I mean, okay, well, one, I'm really tired, so thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I think this is it's certainly an interesting time in our state. I think a lot of us on the ground were not super shocked by what happened on Tuesday, but I do think this is a point where, certainly something has to change. And I have some ideas about what those things might be, and Elad does, and I know that other folks are in that conversation too, but it's going to take all of us and all of our ideas to figure out what to build next. So, thank you for engaging on your beautiful Saturday to talk about the Democratic Party on a day when we elected a new president. It's certainly an interesting day. So, yeah, I think it's a time of transition. And I think a big piece of this is I see the comments of, how do we connect? How do we network? How do we plug in? And there isn't a great place for that right now, that all of these opportunities and resources are transparent in one place. And I think that that's a huge issue. So hopefully in the coming weeks, we have something that we're building. And I'm excited to see what comes next.
Yeah. Oh, Audrey, this was fun. This was great.
It was fun.
Yes. And that's, I think it's an important part. This has to be, we have to make it fun for people to participate. Because otherwise, there's a lot of stuff out there in the world that's already not so fun. And, making this open and lively and bringing our dogs, mine's asleep right now, thank goodness. But I mean, you bring them over and you have a good time and you talk about, that's oftentimes a great place to start. So if you're thinking about what you can do in your community, how to organize, think about things that people would want to do. And start from there, and we'll find a way to move forward. But if there's anything that we can do, save that number. It's on the screen. You can watch this. It will be on later on too. Hit me up anytime, like people are doing right now, and we're happy to help. So, all right. Well, we'll be on tomorrow, and I think Elizabeth put this in the comments on Facebook. If you're on there, cool. If you're not, that's okay. But there's going to be another town hall. This one will be through Zoom. That Elizabeth is running, and I'm going to be very excited to be there. There'll be a lot of other folks there too. So if you've got some time tomorrow, or you're watching this on the replay, and you could get there live, but you really want to, you'll be able to do that again tomorrow. And we'll try to, if you all want, let me know in the comments if you thought this was helpful. We can do more of these. I think we can do some of these around issues. We'll certainly still bring on guests and everybody else to talk about what's going on. But certainly wanted to give everybody time here to share and to put your ideas. So if you're watching on the replay, go ahead and put those comments in there, especially if you can. Go to takebackmo.org, takebackmissouri.org. Put your comments in there. I'm going to read every single one of them, and I really appreciate you building this with us. It's an important time. So thanks, Taylor. Thank you for being here, Taylor.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It was fun.
This is great.
Good
All right,
Saturday.
I'm gonna put the end screen up. You can always find all this stuff over at eladgross.live, and that's where you can share from and everything else. Oh, there's a phone number still on the screen. Phone number's off the screen, and you all enjoy this lovely weekend.